Today's site visit goes to show you that you often find archaeology where you least expect it. You see, I recently went on a little road trip. And while I wasn't exactly expecting the Netflix version of gunfights and boat chases, I sort of had in mind beaches, sun, and oysters. But what I got instead were some really cool experiences up close and personal with community archaeology. So let's dive right in.
On 180, 34 years of age, Jeremy Wells!
The Outer Banks Islands are basically narrow spits of barrier islands along the coast of North Carolina and southern Virginia. In many places, they're no more than a few blocks wide. Now, on the west side, you have the inland waterways, marshy, swampy areas that are perfect for hunting, fishing, boating. And on the east side, facing the ocean, you've got long stretches of sandy beaches and sand dunes. The rough seas, rising sea levels, hurricanes, and lapses in coastal management make these islands, many of which are little more than glorified sandbars, particularly vulnerable to erosion, and some have disappeared altogether over the years. For example, Portsmouth Village was abandoned altogether in the 1970s after many years of declining fortunes due in large part to the shifting sands. It's an eerie place that you can visit on a private tour, though the rough seas often make the voyage too treacherous to undertake. And of course, up the coast a ways is Kitty Hawk, where brothers Orville and Wilbur Wright made the first airplane flight in 1903. Definitely something you're going to want to see if you're an aviation fan, though honestly, I've spent so much of my life in planes, I don't know whether to be thankful for that or what. Anyway, you get the idea. Lots to do and see. Now, I'm going to focus on two bits of history that I bet a lot of people don't even know are here, and these go a long way in defining the early colonial period in America. The golden age of piracy, particularly in the person of Blackbeard, perhaps the most famous pirate of all, and the so-called lost colony of Roanoke. Let's start first with the pirate stuff. The Outer Banks were the stomping grounds of this feared pirate Blackbeard and his flagship Queen Anne's Revenge.
With their heads!
The ship was reputed to have been a prize that Blackbeard won off of some French victims who he raided, though in actuality he only sailed it for about a year. Now, just like this, the dreaded pirate has a lot of lore around him, some of it true, some of it not. He was a tall, imposing man, and to strike fear into his enemies, he lit slow-burning fuses into his beard and around his broad-brimmed hat, taking on an almost demonic quality. But he was neither the most successful nor the most vicious of pirates. But an effort to sell some more books in the 1700s, all the way through to Hollywood production, has led to his reputation becoming a little overblown.
But you have heard of me.
However, Blackbeard has definitely left his mark in these parts. Now, the Queen Anne's Revenge was discovered in Beaufort Inlet in 1996. And there is a decades-long salvage operation going on to rescue all the different bits of the ship. And like many of these wrecks, unfortunately, a raging legal battle ongoing in the courts, even until today. Okay, well, maybe not that vicious, but there is a lot of money at stake, so it has gotten a bit ugly. Examination of the remaining portions of the hull reveal that it was built in a French style, corroborating those tales about the ship's origin. Most of the cannon have been recovered along with thousands of artifacts, which you can actually see in two different places. First, the laboratory where they're being conserved in Greenville, North Carolina, about 2 hours away. And this is open to monthly tours and bespoke tours for groups and scholars. And then there's also the North Carolina Maritime Museum in Beaufort, not far from where the wreck was found. Now, I'm going to bring you to those places in an upcoming site visit, but what I'm covering today was a visit that had a much more intimate feel to it, and that would be on Ocracoke Island. Ocracoke is a small island community that first thrived in the 1700s, and what the people there did was acted as pilots, unloading the cargo from large ocean-going vessels and then piloting it through the treacherous inland waters to the markets like New Bern that were inland, and they did this on much smaller boats that could navigate those waters. However, Ocracoke's most famous resident, from whom a lot of the islanders today descend, his name was William Howard. Now, he bought the whole island in 1759 and lived there until his death in the 1790s at the ripe old age of 108 years old. Now, it's not proven, but it's strongly believed that he is the same William Howard who served as quartermaster for Blackbeard on Queen Anne's Revenge. Now, if you want to explore this topic more thoroughly, I'll put a link below to an extended story about this. Now, that William Howard, the pirate, fortunately for him, he quit the pirating business early enough to receive an amnesty, and this was a Hail Mary for him because it supposedly arrived the night before he was due to hang, and that came from King George I, a guy not exactly famous for his mercy.
Execution, 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 execution. Tough guy. Must be. Pardon, somewhere. Let's see. One left. We're lucky.
So his life was spared. So when you go to Ocracoke, you'll find a lot of people named Howard. And something else you'll find, though you have to look a little bit for it, is the Ocracoke Brogue. Now, that's the dialect spoken by the locals, but like all such dialects, as more and more people are coming in and people from the island are moving to the mainland, it's slowly dying out. In fact, it's due to be extinct in the next 40 to 50 years, unless something changes. After all, what allowed the dialect to survive for so long in the first place was the island's isolation. Now, when you hear it, you're going to hear a little bit English, a little bit Southern, and a little bit pirate.
What told on signs away last night water far night moonshine, no fish.
So I asked around to find out where I could hear this brogue, and I was pointed invariably to Chester Lynn, the local historian, antiques dealer, and gardener, famous for selling the local fig tree, of which there are more than a dozen varieties.
I'm from Ocracoke. I am the 10th generation in my family from Ocracoke. That goes back to the mid-1600s.
Chester Lynn is the proprietor of Annabelle's Antiques right in Ocracoke town, font of local wisdom, and strong advocate for its island and its culture. And he is the keeper of a few precious artifacts from Blackbeard's exploits on the island, albeit not gold or diamonds. His collection includes mostly domestic items like some pewter plates, some pipes and drinking vessels, and cannonballs. According to Chester and some of the other locals, Springer's Point, where there's a small nature preserve just west of Ocracoke town, well, that was a favorite haunt for Blackbeard due to the fact that there was a natural well there so he would get water, and that was actually still visible in living memory, though it no longer exists. And that's just where Chester's collection was found, on Springer's Point. And researchers working on that Blackbeard collection I mentioned before, well, they confirm that the pieces in Chester's collection do match those from Queen Anne's Revenge. So here you have a great example of community archaeology and oral history working together to confirm a point that adds to the Blackbeard story. I love it when that happens. And equally important, the story of this community, which really is a strange bit of living history in and of itself, is enriched by the archaeology too. Thus, the tales that Blackbeard hung out here are very likely true, and also that the inhabitants of the island are all descendants of what we would call his senior leadership team. You see, there's some historical record from the early 1700s, so that would have been before Howard bought the island, of a reverend from the mainland visiting Ocracoke and finding that the inhabitants were a mixture of Native American, Indian, and Europeans. So the thinking is that these were descendants from the inhabitants of that lost colony of Roanoke, but you're going to hear all about that in the second part of my site visit. Well, I heard about a project trying to find the lost colony using modern DNA, and they're doing this by collecting the DNA of people descended from the local Native American tribe called the Croatoans, as well as people who have roots in Ocracoke going back to the 18th or 17th centuries. While I don't know specifically, I'm pretty sure some of the local Ocracokers would have taken part in this study, which will hopefully reveal something about the fate of the lost colony. Oh, and while I'm at it, another cool thing you may see are the wild horses that used to roam the beaches freely in the Outer Banks, although for their own safety they've been given a fenced-in area to protect them from the cars. Well, anyway, how those horses even got there in the first place has always been a bit of a mystery. Were they gotaways from an English colony, perhaps even the lost colony? Well, DNA came to the rescue here, as recent tests reveal that they are pure-blood Spanish Mustang. So actually, they came here from a shipwreck nearby, and I think the shipwreck may have even been identified in some old records. And yes, in case you didn't know, horses are actually excellent swimmers. Anyway, you get the point. In addition to the beautiful sandy beaches of the Outer Banks and also on Ocracoke, there's tons of cultural heritage here, and archaeology is really helping to enrich the story. And the pride of the locals from this region to tell their story, whether that be the Ocracokers, the Downeasters, the Outer Bankers in general, that really makes the visit all the much more touching. But make your visit here soon, because I fear that between the natural migration of people into and out of the Outer Banks and Ocracoke, as well as the general cultural homogenization going on everywhere, regional cultures like this are soon going to exist only in museums and on YouTube. So I encourage you to make your adventure here ASAP. Don't delay. Hey, if you like what you heard, give me that thumbs up below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next dig.